2024 is close to wrapping up, so today we're rounding up the top 25 new single-player games of throughout 2024. Believe it or not, a lot of new single-player games released in 2024. We got a bunch to talk about, so let's just dive right in with number 25. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is a really fun game. It's a traditional return to form for Prince of Persia. I'm not talking like Sands of Time, I'm talking about OG old school Prince of Persia. Here we have a 2D platformer Metroidvania style game with really fun combat, great music, and just overall compelling gameplay. The story might not do it for you, but in terms of raw fun factor, this game has it. Really cool, trippy time powers, great boss battles. Look, here at gameranx, we've had plenty of complaints about Ubisoft games for a couple of years now, but Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is one where they actually nailed it. We want more of this, please. It's fresh, it's different, and it's fun. Now, next over at number 24, Batman Arkham Shadow. While yes, it's going to immediately stop some of you because it is a VR game and it is exclusive to MetaQuest 3. We hope that opens up eventually. All that aside, weirdly enough, Batman Arkham Shadow is a full-on Arkham game. And it's surprisingly great. It takes place after Arkham Origins, so it feels very much more of like an Arkham Origins style game than an Arkham Knight style game, but it is 100% the Batman Arkham stuff translated to VR. I'm talking really great creative story, new and old characters from comic books and the other Arkham games, and combat that really works. You're gliding around with your cape, you're using your gadgets, you're stealth taking out enemies in Predator sections, you're also beating on a bunch of dudes with some surprisingly fun combat that is translated really well to VR. Batman Arkham Shadow is absolutely awesome. Now, next at number 23, we have S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, Heart of Chornobyl. Now, at the time of making this video, this game hasn't quite released, but it's been in the works for many years, and we're excited to see it finally release. The original S.T.A.L.K.E.R games are like hallmarks of really, really fun, creative PC single-player first-person shooters, and we're really hoping that S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 continues that sentiment. Next, over at number 22, we have Senua Saga, Hellblade 2. Now, this one didn't really blow the doors down for people, myself included, but still, if you're looking for a single-player adventure to play through with really pretty graphics, great sound design, and some cool and kind of shocking moments, Hellblade 2 might be for you. If anything, maybe you just wanted to see Senua's story continue. Now over at number 21, we have Enshrouded. You can play this game by yourself, and it is a lot of fun. If you like adventuring, questing, some survival elements, but really creative world design and how that world design actually ties into gameplay and dungeon diving, Enshrouded might be for you. It's definitely a work in progress. It still needs some things that need to be fixed, need to be sorted out, but it's pretty cool if you're playing on PC. Next, over at number 20, we have Nine Souls, a game that we think is going to go down as pretty underrated. If you've been waiting for Hollow Knight Silksong for what feels like a century now, hey, check out Nine Souls. If you're into that type of challenge, that brutal difficulty, that creative, beautiful art style, Nine Souls has got all of that. It is incredibly challenging, but it is a fun and creative game that is very much just a good spin on this genre or formula. Next, over at number 19, we have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. They've continued Cloud Tifa Aerith's story, this time around really opening up the game world and giving you a lot more to do. This is an incredibly massive game, but still continues the great storytelling and vibes from Final Fantasy VII Remake, and if you haven't checked it out, you should. It's probably going to be in some Game of the Year conversations this year. Now, next over at number 18, if we're talking Game of the Year discussion, Warhammer 40k Space Marines 2 should be in that consideration, specifically because it's just a good old-fashioned, fun video game time. While, yes, it does have some multiplayer components that are pretty great, there's a lot of stuff you can play solo, including a really compelling single-player campaign. Even if you're not into Warhammer, if you like adventure and cool, big, over-the-top sci-fi battles, Space Marines 2 is just a really fun playthrough. It feels like a throwback to some of those Xbox 360, PS3 era single-player campaigns, and we certainly don't think that's a bad thing. Next at number 17, we have Frostpunk 2. Frostpunk 2 went in a different direction, where they could have just done the first game, but more, they shook it up a bit more. They went for like a grander, more strategy-style game. It feels like Frostpunk meets Civilization, and I know it's kind of divided some fans, but it's pretty fun to play. It still has a lot of really tough, difficult choices to make, some challenging difficulty, and of course, surviving that harsh winter landscape. That part just doesn't really get old. Next, over at number 16, we have Banishers, Ghosts of New Eden. This is a pretty unique game. It's from the folks behind Vampire or Vampire, however you say it, and it kind of has a similar approach to storytelling. Here, you're in New England in the olden days, but ghosts exist and people know about them, and it's your job to banish these ghosts. The ones that stick around too long, it's essentially your job to move them to the afterlife, and you do that through adventuring, combat, and lots and lots of character choices and dialogue stuff. It's not the best game, you know, some of the combat and exploration stuff gets pretty repetitive, but a lot of the character dialogue and decision-making stuff is pretty unique and creative, so we give it points for that. Now, next over at number 15, we have the Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster. Yep, you're returning to the mall as Frank, the famous journalist who has covered wars, and you have some quality of life improvements now. Aside from the game just looking a little bit better, maybe it loses some of that old school color and style to it, but still, along with that, you have better controls. More characters have voice acting now. The save system is a little less rigid, but still, it feels very much true to form Dead Rising for the most part. It's still really challenging, and honestly, structurally unlike any other game we've played since. Next, over at number 14, we have Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Most notably, the campaign. The campaign here is really good. After Modern Warfare 3's abysmal campaign, they've really come back strong with a really unique adventure here that kind of follows up Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, with more political intrigue and thrills, now centered more around the early 90s, but don't get it twisted. While there's plenty of cool spy moments and some generic war shootouts in the desert, there's also a bit of creativity here. There's some weird levels, and they experiment a little bit, and we like that. Next, over at number 13, we have Mario and Luigi Brothership for Nintendo Switch. This is technically the 6th main installment in the Mario and Luigi series, and it's a role-playing game. Mario and Luigi have these really cool moves. The game has a really incredible art style. It's kind of been billed as like a combo of Super Mario RPG and Paper Mario. That's probably the easiest way to describe it. And while the Switch is really at the end of its life cycle, it's still nice to see a couple good things like this releasing. Next, over at number 12, we have Still Wakes the Deep. This is a first-person narrative adventure that takes some really good horror turns. You're on a Scottish oil rig, and it's up to you to figure out what's going on with some otherworldly horrors. Honestly, it's best to go into this one completely blind, but it is really cool. If you like shorter, fun, first-person adventures that tell a real damn good story and are dripping in creepy atmosphere, consider Still Wakes the Deep. Now, next over at number 11, Rise of the Ronin is like a really fun mashup of Ghost of Tsushima and a Souls-like, but it's a little bit easier, it's a little bit more arcadey, but it is still a ton of fun. Interestingly enough, this is from Team Ninja, the people behind games like Nioh and Wolong Fallen Dynasty. They're doing things a little bit different here, and I know this one really didn't like bust the doors down in the gaming world or anything like that, but it was still a ton of fun to play through, and the world is surprisingly big with a lot to do. Still, for me, it's all about the character customization, the combat, and the gore. Next, over at number 10, we have Towers of Aghasba. This is a little bit of a weirder one. It's releasing in early access soon, so while we haven't played it, it just looks different. It's a single-player, open-world survival crafting game, but it just kind of gives us a little bit of a different feeling when you look at it. It's got cool monsters, a really interesting, kind of unique fantasy vibe, and seemingly a bit of influence from things like Dark Cloud, with you kind of building out some towns and stuff and really creating a whole civilization. You can play this with people, but it seems like you can also play it on your own, and it could be some good fun. It's releasing in early access November 19th. Next, over at number 9, we have Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree. This DLC expansion, of course, you've probably heard about it by now, and chances are if you're an Elden Ring person, you've probably played it by now. It's awesome. It's more Elden Ring, it's more challenge, it adds some stuff to the RPG elements, it gives you a new area to explore, and there's a lot of bang for your buck here. There's a lot of gameplay here. It's worth checking out if you feel anything positive about Elden Ring, because From Software just continues to deliver. I don't know what more can be said at this point with them. Next, over at number 8, we have Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. This is another one that hasn't released yet. It's squeaking in at the tail end of the year in December, but it's looking pretty promising. It's from Machine Games, the people behind the Wolfenstein games, and this to me looks very much like Indiana Jones meets Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay. I think that's a cool thing. It's a first/third-person adventure centered around Indy in his prime, which is something I would very much like to see again, and I hope this game works out, and I hope it's good and entertaining, because I still think the world needs more Indiana Jones, specifically video games. There was a time where we had tons of Indiana Jones games and adventures, and it was awesome, so hopefully this is a return to form for that, at least. Harrison Ford can't live forever, but if Indy can live on in video games, I am okay with that. Next, over at number 7, we have Sonic X Shadow Generations. This is a great idea. Essentially, it's Sonic Generations, an awesome game, modernized, brought up in current-gen fidelity and graphics and stuff like that, but also they've added a bunch of Shadow the Hedgehog content. Yes, everybody's favorite edgy hedgehog, whatever the hell his deal is, you get a bunch of Shadow content to play, and it's pretty fun and entertaining. Next, down at number 6, we have Pacific Drive. This is like a single-player survival adventure where your main resource, your main thing, is an old beat-up car. It's your safety, it's your protection from this harsh, violent, irradiated landscape, yes, but also it's your main tool for getting out there and combating the elements. As you progress through kind of like mid-sized levels, you scavenge and collect and upgrade your car with essentially a bunch of different science machines, ways to combat the weird scientific anomalies that are threatening you in your vehicle, but also better wheels for off-roading, more fuel storage, all kinds of cool stuff. I really enjoyed Pacific Drive. It's definitely got its challenges, and the controls are a little finicky sometimes, yes, but it was unlike anything else I've played in a couple of years. It just feels really creative and fresh, and I think you should check it out. Now, next, over at number 5, we have Stellar Blade. Speaking of creative and fresh, this is just a fun game, straight up. The story and all that stuff isn't really very interesting, but the music, the visuals, and the really good combat just make it a good, fun, old-fashioned video game ride. If you like things like Nier Automata, sure, there are a lot of influences here. The game definitely wears them on its sleeve, but the combat, some really good boss battles, and some creative environment design just really do some great heavy lifting here. Stellar Blade was a blast. Now, over at number 4, we have Manor Lords. This game really took the PC gaming world by storm when it released in early access in April. It's just really solid already. And it's a really good hybrid of a bunch of things, like large-scale, nerdy, tactical medieval battles, but also some really good city building. Not only are you building this city, but you're dealing with the economy, you're dealing with some social aspects. There is a ton of depth to Manor Lords. A shocking amount, really. And I said a lot of buzzwords there at you. You know, strategy, medieval city builder, the open world social economic stuff. Yes, I think if any of those phrases really pique your interest, you should at the very least just look into Manor Lords. It's cool. Now at number 3, we have the Silent Hill 2 Remake. Yes, Bloober Team, the folks behind games like Layers of Fear, The Medium, the Blair Witch game, really actually nailed it. Silent Hill 2 Remake does a really good job of capturing the spirit and essence of the original, not screwing up or really getting rid of anything, and adding a little bit more gameplay to it and some cool features. The story is intact, and the new James Sunderland, the main character, does a really good job conveying all the emotion and stuff here. Also, it's just a scary game. The dark, moody graphics really help elevate the tension and fear and survival horror factor here. We think Silent Hill 2 Remake is a success. Now down at number 2, Black Myth Wukong, a really fun action-adventure game with just a unique feeling to it, because it's based on Chinese myth and a classical novel, Journey to the West. So with that, you have really creative boss designs, strange, larger-than-life environments that kind of gradually get bigger and bigger as you go through the game, and just a really cool silent protagonist. The combat is really fun. It may not be the most complex, in-depth thing in the world, but still, the game is incredibly challenging and just fun. Also, the graphics are out of this world. Overall, this game, it was really hyped up before release, but we're happy to see that it actually lived up to that hype. Now down at number 1, Dragon's Dogma 2. Yes, the long-awaited return to the classic Capcom RPG is here, and people have been loving it. It's not without its flaws, but that's a Dragon's Dogma game. Of course it's going to be weird and have some weird stuff, but you got a bigger world, more pawns, and tons of complex RPG character building choices. If this year you were looking for just a good solo RPG adventure, look no further. Now, those are 25 games, but there are so many more than that. We got some bonus ones we have to cram in as well, most notably Pal World, because you can play it solo, and it's a cool adventure. Also, Star Wars Outlaws, Dragon Age The Veilguard also recently released, as well as, of course, Persona 3 Reload, the re-release remake of the classic JRPG, and the indie hit Animal Well. So, like I said, those are 25 or so new single-player games for 2024. Let us know in the comments what you've been playing. It literally helps us. We use this for research. So whatever you're playing, we want to hear from you so we can tailor more videos to your preferences. But let us know what you're thinking about any of these games from throughout 2024 down there. And if you like this video, clicking a like button actually helps us. Thank you. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.